Another day of The Case of the Rock and Roll Dog by Barbara Freeman. When we stopped last time, the girls were being detectives and they were trying to figure out what happened to Colonel Michael's baton. They have discovered that lots of other things have been going missing too. So they're going to try to keep looking and see what else they can discover. Chapter 12. The flower shop is on the ground floor. The fastest way to get there is through the cross hall and down the main stairs. We were on our way down when we saw them. Yellow petals everywhere, a daffodil disaster. I told you I had a bad feeling, said Tessa. And sure enough, here came Mr. Bainey carrying a large bouquet. Only it wasn't a bouquet of flowers, it was a bouquet of stems. That dog of yours, he thundered. Mr. Bainey is 6 feet 4 inches tall and played football in college. He already doesn't like Hooligan on account of something that happened last month with a vase, some roses, and a cabinet secretary. Have you seen him? I asked. No, I haven't, said Mr. Bainey, and he'll stay out of sight if he knows what's good for him. He waved the stems. Look's what's left of my beautiful arrangement. We'll help clean up, Tessa said. Mr. Bainey likes Tessa. He thinks she has flair. He calmed down a little. I appreciate the offer, but the staff will do it. Meanwhile, I just ran into Mrs. Hedges. She said you girls are detecting. Something about a missing baton? That's right, said Tessa, and she explained. Mr. Bainey shook his head. I'm afraid I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, he said. Are you quite sure your dog didn't take it? We were holding him when it disappeared, I said. Mr. Bainey shrugged. I wish I could be more helpful. My watch said 5:30. There were still a few minutes before the Mayers would be arriving. We went back up the stairs to look for Mr. Ross. His office is by the north portico, but he wasn't there. Leaving it, we ran into Nate. He was coming from the blue room and heading for the stairs. What are you doing down here? I asked. I thought you were busy after school. Nate didn't look at us. He just kept walking. I am busy, he mumbled. And now I'm going upstairs to be more busy. When he was gone, Tessa looked at me. Our cousin has issues. I was going to agree, but I never had the chance. 2 men wearing gray suits came into the cross hall from the east room. I had never seen them before, which was unusual. Even though more than 100 people work in the White House, most of them look familiar. I was about to ask Tessa if she knew them when Randy, another Secret Service agent, appeared. Please, he said to the men, could you follow me? I think there's been some confusion. The men didn't seem to understand at first. Didn't they speak English? But finally they followed him out. Could they be our stupid baton thieves? Tessa asked. I don't know, I said. I'm like Mr. Bryant, not sure what stupid baton thieves look like. Chapter 13. In our family, we never eat dinner till 6:30 or 7. Granny believes we will wake up hungry in the night if we eat earlier. So when Tessa and I got back upstairs, we had time to apply logic. The striped sofa in the west sitting hall seemed like a good place for this. It is soft and cozy. Good for thinking. Hooligan was in the west sitting hall too, sound asleep in his bed. To look at him, you'd never believe the damage he does to daffodils. Do you think he stole the other stuff too, Cammy? Tessa asked. The place cards and the polishing cloth? Don't forget the cookies, I said. And no, I don't. Most times when Hooligan steals something, we find it right away, like the flowers. I don't think we're ever going to find those cookies, Tessa said. Good point, I said. And we know he didn't steal the baton. Do you think there's more than one thief in the White House? Tessa asked. That doesn't seem logical, I said. Let's look at our notes. It's not easy to write fast standing up. So even though I have good handwriting, ask Evgenia, my notes were kind of a mess. After I crossed out the unimportant stuff, this is what was left. 1. Mr. Bryant's eyesight is not very good. 2. No witnesses had seen anything strange Tuesday afternoon. Mostly they were too busy chasing Hooligan. 3. It's not only the baton that's missing, also place cards, polished, and cloth cookies. 4. Mrs. Hedges is exasperating. 5. Mayors like Italian food. 6. A basket of breadsticks would be a good place to hide something long and skinny. 7. Tessa has a crush on Mr. Patel. 8. Hooligan wrecked the daffodils and scattered petals everywhere. 9. Hooligan makes Mr. Bainey grumpy. 10. Nate was on the state floor this afternoon. Why? 11. And so were 2 men wearing gray suits. Tessa made me cross out the part about Mr. Patel. Then we stared at the list for a while. Finally, I said, logic isn't helping. I know, Tessa said. Maybe we need more witnesses. There's Mr. Ross, I said. And what about Nate? Tessa said. You're right. He was in the East Room Tuesday, only he wasn't there the whole time, remember? When we were holding Hooligan, he kind of disappeared. Yeah, that was strange, Tessa said. Then she looked up. Hey, we've been asking people about strange all afternoon, and there it is. I was going to say Nate would never steal anything, but then I thought of something logical. Tessa, remember how you thought they'd have to cancel the Song Boys? I mean, because the baton was missing? When I still thought it was the Who's the Baton, Tessa said. Sousa, right. It was Nate who told us that the band can't play without it. Tessa nodded. But now we know that isn't true. We know that, I said. But Nate doesn't. He wasn't there when we talked to Colonel Michaels, and after that, we never told him. I bet he still thinks if the baton is gone, then the Song Boys can't play. Tessa's eyes got big. And besides that, remember, he told us he hoped something would happen so they can't play. For a moment, the only sound was Hooligan woofing in his sleep. Finally, Tessa said what we were both thinking. What if Nate took the baton so they'd have to cancel the Song Boys? I didn't answer right away. I might hate my cousin, but I couldn't believe he would steal anything. Tessa, on the other hand, could totally believe it. There's only one question left, she said. What did he do with the baton? I wanted my sister to slow down, but she was on a roll. When he came out of the blue room today, he wouldn't say what he was doing. Tessa went on. You know what I think? The baton is in the blue room. Tessa, that's nuts. It's not. Look, Cammie, here's what happened. When Hooligan did the frenzy on Tuesday, Nate grabbed the baton. Then he had to hide it fast. He couldn't carry it upstairs because anybody might see him, so he hid it someplace downstairs. Okay, I said. But what does that have to do with him being down there today? Maybe he was making sure it was still there, that we hadn't found it, Tessa said. He wasn't carrying anything when we saw him, so it's still down there. Come on! Tessa jumped to her feet, but at the same time, Granny came in and said we should go wash up. Granny, Tessa announced, there is an emergency. I am afraid we will have to delay dinner. Granny was not impressed. And what is this so-called emergency? Nate stole Colonel Michael's baton and hid it, Tessa said. And now Cammy and I must go and get it back. Chapter 14. Granny's answer was dead silence. Not a good sign. Finally, Tessa said, "Are you angry at Nate?" "No," Granny said. "Are you angry at us?" "Yes," Granny said. And then she let us have it. "You girls have been out to get that boy since we moved into the White House. His behavior hasn't been perfect, goodness knows, but I can hardly blame him if he feels ganged up on." Unlike me, Tessa is not a wimp. If someone gets mad at her, she gets mad back. "In my opinion," she put her hands on her hips, "Nate stole that baton." "And in my opinion," Granny's hands were on her hips too, "you are full of prunes, Tessa Parks. Your cousin, my grandson, is not a thief. And that is the last I want to hear on the subject. Understood?" She looked at Tessa first, then me. We looked at her shoes. "Understood," we said meekly. And we also understood that there would be no more detecting that night. Dinner was not so fun. Granny didn't once crack a smile, and Tessa and I were half afraid to talk. Besides the fancy Italian noodles, the only good thing was that Nate didn't eat with us. According to Granny, he was having some kind of an extra piano lesson. An extra piano lesson? Here in America in the 21st century, I am one of 2 kids my age who does not have a phone. Nate is the other. Supposedly, we are too young, and all the excellent arguments about why we need them, like being the only person without one is ruining my social life, do not convince our parents. Nate and Aunt Jen have their own family phone upstairs. People call me on our family's phone. Usually when it rings, for me, it's Courtney. But that night, it wasn't. "Cameron, this is Colonel Michaels. How are you?" I was sitting on the floor doing homework. Picturing Colonel Michaels, I sat up straight. "Fine, sir. How are you?" "Very well, thank you. I was just wondering whether you've had any success with the baton." Tessa was sitting beside me. Granny was in a chair across the room. There was a book in her lap, but I knew she was listening. If I mentioned Nate, she'd go ballistic. "Not exactly success," I said, "but today we interviewed witnesses and applied logic." "Ah," said Colonel Michaels. "And tomorrow, I looked at Tessa for help, but she shrugged and shook her head. "Well, tomorrow, our plan is to find it once and for all." "Splendid," said Colonel Michaels. "Then perhaps you could meet me just prior to the concert and bring the baton with you." What I said was, "No problem," but what I thought was, "I hope." Mom still hadn't come upstairs when we went to bed, so once again Granny said goodnight. She had barely closed the door when Tessa rolled over. "It's in the blue room." I wasn't so sure. But I didn't have a better idea. "The 3-color rooms connect," I reminded her. "Nate could have been in red or green for all we know." "You're right," said Tessa. "How about this? Pretend you're Nate on the state floor on Tuesday. You need a good hiding place in a hurry. Where do you go?" I didn't have to think. I just knew. It was something Granny had shown me, Nate, and Tessa the first week we moved in. Even then, I had thought what a brilliant place it would be to hide something. "The work table," I said. I couldn't see my sister in the dark, but I could feel her smiling. "Cammy, you're a genius." Chapter 15. Granny doesn't usually stay mad for long, and she was in a better mood at breakfast, especially after she saw us acting super nice to Nate. Weirdly, Nate was pretty nice himself. Like in the van on the way to school, Granny gave me my last spelling quiz before the test, and he didn't show off and spell words before I could. Did he maybe feel guilty about stealing the baton? Then at school something good happened, finally. On everybody's desk, except mine and Nate's, were thick cream-colored envelopes with the return address, the White House, in blue. Courtney had one, and so did Ms. Nichols. Inside were fancy printed invitations. President Marilee Parks, Mr. Richard Parks, and Ms. Jennifer Leone request the pleasure of your presence at a performance by the Song Boys in support of literacy, 2 p.m. on Saturday, the East Room of the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Refreshments to follow. Score, Aunt Jen! Right away, the girls started talking about what they were going to wear, and the boys started talking about what they were going to eat. For a little while, I got to be the hero, and Nate didn't even spoil it by calling the Song Boys bubblegum. But at recess, Courtney said, "When they're done singing, do we get FaceTime?" And Alexander said, "If there's pizza, I can't have tomatoes. I'm allergic." And after recess, Ms. Nichols said, "I'm sure everyone would really appreciate it if the Song Boys would take a few minutes to answer questions. Can that be arranged, Cameron?" So much for being a hero. I told them all the same thing. I don't know. It's up to Aunt Jen and Mrs. Silver. The spelling test was after lunch. I thought after Granny had quizzed me so much I would ace it, but I couldn't concentrate. And no matter how I arranged the letters, the words kept looking wrong. "How did it go?" Granny asked in the van later. "I don't want to talk about it," I said. Tessa and I wanted to go detecting as soon as we got home, but what were we going to tell Granny? And how would we get rid of Nate? Luckily, Nate disappeared upstairs right after our snack, and when we asked for permission to go downstairs, Granny said okay. She knew Colonel Michaels had called, and we were careful not to remind her about our number one suspect. This time, Tessa didn't bother to change clothes. She just grabbed her pink Sherlock Holmes hat, and we raced downstairs to the green room. In case you're wondering, I am not normally a person who thinks furniture is interesting. You sit on it, eat on it, put a book on it. Besides that, who cares? But the work table in the green room is different. I noticed it when Granny explained it was the same design as her grandmother's sewing box, but bigger. Tessa had asked, "Did your grandmother know she had a rare and historic antique?" And Granny pointed out, she thought it was the latest high-tech gadget. Now Tessa and I were beside the table. "Ready?" Tessa asked. "Be careful," I said. "It's historic." "Duh," Tessa said. "Isn't like what isn't around here." Carefully, she removed the lamp on top and set it on the floor. Next, she lifted the tabletop. Then together we unfolded all the bits and pieces to reveal about 1,000,000 hidden compartments. That's what makes this the superhero of furniture. Mild-mannered table on the outside, secret transformer on the inside. I wasn't disappointed when we didn't find the baton right away. Nate would have hidden it better than that. But after we one by one opened every lid and drawer, I had to admit I was wrong. "Guess I'm not such a genius," I said. "But maybe the bad guy isn't Nate? Granny says criminals are stupid, and Nate isn't." "But I don't know anybody stupid," Tessa whined. "Mom says Hooligan's not too bright," I said. Tessa looked around. "Shh, you'll hurt his feelings. And anyway, I meant a person." I shrugged. "Mostly the White House is full of smart people, unless you believe what Courtney's dad writes in his blog." "Maybe Courtney's dad took the baton? Or what about Courtney?" "Why would they do that?" I said. "And besides, the baton disappeared on Tuesday. Courtney hasn't even been here since Monday." Tessa tapped her head. "Way to apply logic, Cammie. I know. Those men in gray suits. Who were they anyway? They weren't carrying any baton, I said. They weren't carrying anything. That means if they did steal it, they had to have hidden it, Tessa said. I know. What about the fireplaces? This was a smart idea. Almost every room on the state floor has one, and they're all full of kindling. Kindling, which is just sticks, would make excellent camouflage for a baton. We started with the green room, then fanned out. Poking around fireplaces is dusty. It hurts your knees. Plus, I got a splinter. I had just finished up in the red room when I heard Tessa squeal. Did she find it? Where are you? East room! Hurry! And we are stopping there for this time. I hope you're enjoying it. So, if you were going to be one of the characters in this story, which one would you want to be? Would you want to be Tessa? Would you want to be Cammy? What about Nate? Or Granny? Who would you want to be if you were one of the characters in this book? Let me know.